And with us here on Six News, Stuart Bonds, he was One Nation's candidate for Hunter at a couple of elections now, most recently just in May. He made the two candidate preferred there, the seat Labor held on to. And he's very much still active with One Nation as they grow. We can talk about the branches a lot, which is one thing. But Stuart, good to have you back on.
Yeah, thanks for that, Leo. Good to be back on here, mate, after everything's all washed up. And yeah, we speaking of the branches, we actually launched the Hunter Valley branch last night out in Cessnock there for all the members. So there was probably, I don't know, 60 people there. The new South Wales Senator Bell, come up. Sean Bell, he was up there and introduced himself to the membership, and we had a dinner, so sit down dinner. It was really good. Yeah.
Yeah, so just going back to your campaign, first of all, didn't win, but you did make that 2CP, as I said, which is not something One Nation, does in most of the 150 seats. We spoke just before the election day, and it was interesting because you were talking about kind of the profile of the electorate, what you'd been hearing, and certainly I guess that support was shown by the fact you were able to make 2CP. What do you think stopped you from the final hurdle though of actually winning the seat? It was your third election in a row running for it. Was it just Labor's, national swing was just too large to account for?
Yeah, there was a couple of things that their swing was enormous. But they also there was probably about 15 to 17,000 votes, I think, that we shed from the upper Hunter in the seat redistribution. Okay, so there's a lot of people who've moved to the Hunter. They had to do some shuffling, some moving and shaking in the electoral boundaries. And what ended up happening was areas that were a lot more One Nation slash national voters up in the upper Hunter, so sort of Muswellbrook area and a lot more coal mining sort of areas and farming, agricultural areas. There was Sandy Hollow, there was Denman, all of those areas got handed on to Barnaby Joyce in New England. And the boundary got brought down a lot further towards Singleton. And then we picked up an area called Curry, which is near Maitland, just outside of Newcastle. And that was a lot stronger Labor support down there. So we probably, as I said to the guys before we started, we're probably 3 points behind straight off the bat, just if you just switch out the voting results from the previous election. And then you also have the swing, so that Labor got nationally. So I think he was 4 points in front to start, and he finished up about 9 points in front. So I think that sort of accounts for the basic, the makeup of it.
Notwithstanding that it's just under 3 years away, but is it something you'd like to have another crack at? I mean, 4 elections in a row is something, but you're certainly, accustomed to running now, and evidently you have shown that you're able to make that top 2.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. It is difficult, and it's a hard thing to do to get onto onto the podium there. To get your face into that 2PP is an extremely difficult thing to do, and I'm extremely grateful for everyone that helped me, because it's a team sport, politics. Like, it's definitely not a one-man show, and the party did extremely well. Glad to be back on board there. As we've seen, the polls are moving in the right direction. I wish they moved in that direction prior to the election, but I mean, that's another thing. But yeah, look, I'm not going to give up on it. I'm not going to, but I don't want to be fighting the last war either. So the next battle for us here in the state of New South Wales is the New South Wales state election, and that is coming up in March of 2027. So I think it'll be all hands on deck looking at that, and then we'll sort of be having more of a look at the federal after that. But it's not something I'm going to give up on.
Hey, you mentioned Sean Bell, the new New South Wales senator who replaced Warwick Stacey there. I know you had kind of flagged just a bit of interest in potentially being the senator. I know that was a process, and as you said, you were happy to let the party make the decision, which they did. Disappointed you didn't get it though?
Look, I would have been happy to have done it. I would have been honoured to have done it if I was asked. But at the end of the day, it wasn't my decision to make. It was something that needed to be done at the party level, the upper echelons of the party. it was their decision to make. And as I said, look, no matter what way you go with it, you guys are the ones that are in Canberra. You need to work with the people. You pick who you want. It's sort of. I don't know if disappointed is the word. I mean, like I said, I would have been honoured to have done it, but the reality is Warwick Stacey had that position anyway. He won it, so it wasn't something that was taken away from me, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like I hadn't earned it. So, so Sean's a good choice. I know Sean. I get on well with him. He came and had a beer with me and dinner that night. We caught up at CPAC. There's absolutely no hard feeling whatsoever. I'm looking really forward to working with Sean. So, yeah, mate, what can you say? You win some, you lose some.
And just circling back as well to the branches, because that's something when we spoke to Senator Hanson just after the election, this has been the thing that I guess has been some might call it a long time coming. One Nation hasn't really had branches in the same way that Labor, Liberal, the Greens, the Nationals have had. You're now getting them in those local areas. There's been a few launches. I know in New England there was you had the president of a local Nationals branch was the most recent defection as well. I'm sure you would have seen that.
Yep.
What do you think this does in terms of helping One Nation's membership, support, and votes grow? Having actually structured branches where members can have a formal say rather than as I guess it was before, which was just 8 state and territory branches.
Yeah, look, it's something that you've got to grow into. I mean, it's not something that can happen overnight. I mean, Pauline's only been back in there since it was like 2016 or something. The party sort of got really kicked off again. It was Pauline Hanson's in name only prior to her coming back on board and getting re-elected. So, look, we've grown into the spot where now we've got enough senators there, enough representation. It is just time for the party to grow. It's just an evolution. A lot of people, pointed at us and said, there's no democratic process in One Nation. Well, that's simply not true. We just hadn't evolved to that position yet. And I'll let you tell you, the Labor Party, Dan Rapicoli in my seat, the branch didn't vote for him at all. That was a captain's pick. So any time that it doesn't matter, these major parties will let the branches have a say. But any time that it does matter, it's a captain's pick, right? You look at the leadership of the Greens. They didn't go to the membership for that sort of thing. They went and just did a behind-the-scenes vote, and outcome, who was it? Larissa Waters. And then, so there's, look, the branch structure has actually been the demise of the Liberal Party. This is how they ended up with so many moderates in where they are. And so I would say that if the branches are not done properly, they are not handled properly, and they're not set up to represent the party and maintain the values of the party, then they will be your downfall. Because people will get in there that don't represent your party, they will attempt to change it, and it will be wide-handed from the inside out.
Well, can I ask, is that a concern for One Nation in terms of, I guess, some members? I know there's a label that's associated with One Nation. I'm sure you'd reject it, which is, extremist, et cetera, which does get thrown around in relation to your party. Are you worried, though, you let in the kind of wrong member? They kind of do entryism into a branch and they take over a branch. Is that kind of a fear as a new party growing? Because as you said, you've got to build up these structures, right? This isn't a completed thing. You're only launching branches literally as we speak. Yeah. As you said, you had the one most recent last night.
Yeah. And look, I don't think it's a concern, because there is a process to it. You can't just come in and just open up a branch. I mean, I think there's I don't have the rules here in front of me, but it's something like, to lead a branch, you need to have been a member for 6 months, right? It's not just like if you come out of the blue and say we want to open up a branch, they're going to just give you the flag and say, okay, have a crack at it. There's an interview process. They make sure that the people are vetted, and we have a solid base already, a solid membership already that want to get this stuff moving. So I'm not too concerned about it. And at the end of the day, the way that it's set up is that the federal committee has oversight anyway, right? So if they notice them going off track, the federal committee can sit down and Pauline can have the final say. No, this this branch has gone off track. They are not representing your extremist views. They need to be shut down, right? And so she has the ultimate control of it, which I think is a good thing.
Now, let's talk about those poll numbers, which has been reflected in every poll. We're not talking about one exception or another. I think just about every poll would have you no less than 1% behind the Greens, some equal, quite a few actually ahead, which is significant. I think the stat we saw was a high support since the Turnbull government for One Nation in polls. And of course, that was when Pauline Hanson got back into politics, as you said, and actually won her seat at that double dissolution, as One Nation did in a few states. Put simply, what's behind this? It's not too long after an election. Is it buyer's remorse? What do you think it is?
Well, I think if you look at what's happened to the Liberal National Party, that are on the right of centre, they're chasing the Labor Party to the left, and so as they're moving further to the left, they're not consuming Labor votes; they're just losing votes on their right flank, right? And those people are coming over. They're coming over to us. And so the Liberals, they don't stand for anything. They have no principles anymore. They agree with the largest socialist policy that's ever been invented, which is net zero. Okay, you cannot call yourself a conservative and also go down the road of net zero, because the amount of social controls and social intervention, it's just not something that a conservative can naturally get behind and support. It's all right to care for the environment, but the meddling that needs to be done and the destruction of the environment to get this done, it's just over the top. But the Liberals, they have no principles. Whereas you look at Pauline Hanson and what she has said when she first got into Parliament in like 1996 and what she says today, it's the same thing, right? So you're getting some consistency. Whereas you look at the difference between John Howard and Susan Ley, they're two different people. The party has moved, but the electorate hasn't. They still have conservative values. So while ever she's there, she is the best thing for the One Nation membership.
Can I ask as well, and this was something that was brought up pre-election, certainly something we covered when we had our minor party Senate debates, is which party, I guess, should a lot of the disaffected, not just right, but disaffected voters go to? And there's more than a few. You'd call them the right wing minor parties, however you want to label them, that exist. You and I both know that the leader of Trumpeter Patriots was, of course, a candidate in Hunter,
Yep.
and I know that Clive Palmer's seeking to kind of bring back the UAP as well. There's also talk about, well, what if certain, I guess, conservative members of the Liberals and the National split off and form their own party, Andrew Hastie, etc. You obviously have a vested interest in making sure it's One Nation, the party being built up. So why One Nation? Why them? Why not a new party? Why not one of the other minor parties? Why is One Nation the best alternative in your view?
Because of the consistency that's there. The party infrastructure is there. It would be so hard for someone to start a brand new party and get it to the level that One Nation got. I think we got something like 300,000 first preference votes. Now to go to zero to something like that, it'll just take a lifetime. The system has been set up, and every way through it, they've changed it, they've altered it, they've tried to stop One Nation from getting in. They changed the voting rules. They preferenced each other to get Pauline Hanson out of there in the first place. They locked her up in jail. They've done everything because they know that she is a threat. She's always been a threat. And as the support gets behind her and as her team gets built behind her and the confidence is there, we're going to go leaps and bounds. So, and it is an issue having these minor right parties. And I would say if they want to form a coalition, go and do it, because it's much better to be us versus one group of these minor right parties rather than us versus 10 of them, because you lose you get this fracturing that happens with the preferences, and they just go everywhere. They're a lot more controlled when there's just one of them. And so that's how we got elected into the Senate. So we we might not be everyone's first favourite party, but we're a lot of people's second and third favourite party. And so that's what bumped us up and bumped us over the line. So, look, we don't consider ourselves a minor party. We got more votes than all of those minor parties combined. So I don't know why we should be throwing out the olive branch, especially when they threw us under the bus the way that they did, wrote us off some of the cards. The trust isn't there with a lot of these parties. So I don't think it's an option for us to form any sort of formal coalition, if you know what I mean.
We've seen kind of, as I mentioned before, the polling for One Nation be decent, certainly not at the level it is now, but before the last election. And then ultimately the final result is, maybe 1 to 2% less than what the polls were suggesting. Some of that's been attributed to the fact that the other, or again, you don't just call yourself a minor party, but I'll say the other right-wing parties, they're not named in the polls. So for instance, Trumpet of Patriots isn't named in most polls. Rennick people first, etc. And so people see him on the ballot. That's a little different. Does that kind of play into your mind? Again, we're speaking 2.5 years out from an election federally, so I get it's a while away. But does that play into your mind that it could be false hope? I guess, given the numbers again have been very, very good.
Yeah, and look, the reality is we do poll better in the polls than we do on the day, because the reality is that they only give you so many options in the poll. They might only give you 6 options. They give you the 2 majors, the Greens. You'll get One Nation, then you'll get a Teal and an other, right? Well, One Nation's the best name that I heard. But on the day, the Trumpets might be there. They might go, oh yeah, I'll pick the Trumpets, but I'll pick One Nation second. So yes, that does play into effect. So we might shave a couple of percent, but if we're at that 16%, 14%, that's a huge number. That's a senator in every state, regardless if you shave 2% off.
And so in terms of the, maybe end game isn't the right word, but we're talking 2028 still. I know you mentioned 2027. That'll be fascinating to watch as well. We know that parties outside Labor, the Coalition, and the Greens aren't strangers to winning lower house seats. I mean, Shooters won 3 in at one point. But if we look at 2028 federally, right, there are a couple seats like Hunter where One Nation has been able to make 2 CP, or from our projections, we've been doing some projecting and looks like potentially could. What would, whether it's you, whether it's someone else, whether it's a different state, what would a House of Representatives One Nation seat actually do for the party and for building it further? What would, 1 or 2 seats at least help? How would that help the party?
Well, not just help the party. I think it would psychologically help the other people and the candidates that are running, right? It'll give you a sense of hope and of possibility of change. Someone can break in from the right onto those into those Liberals national seats. It will just send a shockwave through the place. That's why it made so much noise when the first election that I run, when it was up in the air whether I would have beat Joel Fitzgibbon. It just blew them away. How could this have happened? Like, what have we done so wrong that this coal miner may have beaten the ex-defence minister and the leader of the right-wing faction of the Labor Party? The shockwaves that it sends around the place. I probably got 100 phone calls from different journalists to talk about it, because that's how serious of a situation that was. Because the other thing is, it's not just if you get in there, but if you get in there and do a good job, right? If you actually do a good job and you actually represent the people and you speak for the people on the floor of Parliament, then that is a real problem, right? That is a real problem for the establishment, because they don't want that in the lower house. They'll tolerate it in the Senate. The lower house is who picks the PMs and the ministers. They do not want anyone in that house. So, but we're working away at it. I mean, the Liberal Party's our best friend at the moment. The Labor Party's not doing themselves any favours. I mean, they're out there. They've got a massive seat majority, but as you know, Bill Shorten lost the unlosable election on the same percentage point win that Albo just one in a landslide. So look, the pendulum swings, forward, and it also swings back. So they better be careful when it comes back. There's a lot of people. You can see a lot of people out on the streets demonstrating at the moment at these March for Australia rallies. There's tens of thousands of people out on the streets, and it's really hard to get conservative people to find the time to get out on the streets. You've really got to piss them off to get them to do that.
Will be fascinating to see. I'm sure we'll catch up again in the future. Stuart Bonds, again, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your time. All right, see you, mate.